We've been talking on the YouTube channel about none other than Cyberpunk 2077, one of the most anticipated games of the year. It's one of the top most anticipated games for myself, along with a couple other titles out there, but it's certainly near the top, guys. And in this segment of the show, we want to talk about everything we know so far about the game. So let's get into it. So Stephen Messner and Tyler Wilde were the ones who wrote an article, guys, by PC Gamer talking about Cyberpunk 2077. Cyberpunk 2077 is the next big RPG from CD Projekt Red after concluding the Witcher series. Silver Swords are out, but cybernetic blades are very much in. For a couple months, information about Cyberpunk 2077 was dropping almost every week. We met Keanu Reeves' character, got details about the story, and have seen several new videos, both trailers and gameplay. With release day pushed back to September from its initial April date, there's still plenty of time for CD Projekt Red to drip feed new information. Until then, we've absorbed all of the precious Cyberpunk 2077 deets and consolidated them into a digestible briefing. So when is Cyberpunk 2077's release date? September 17, 2020 is the release date for Cyberpunk 2077. The RPG was initially set for an April 16 launch, but CD Projekt Red announced in January that it needs more time to finish playtesting, fixing, and polishing. When it launches in September, it'll come to PC, PS4, Xbox One, and Google Stadia. Now, one thing I want to mention about this, guys, anytime that a game ends up being pushed back because of whatever the reason might be, it might not be ready, or really whatever, is the reasoning that the game is pushed back, at times it does throw up a red flag for me. It's not always necessarily a negative thing. A lot of times, like if you look at games like The Last of Us 2 or, even Watch Dogs Legion, the Resident Evil remake, or Rainbow Six Quarantine, a lot of these games have been delayed from when they were initially going to be released. And Cyberpunk 2077 is, of course, no exception to that. It also has, been pushed back. Now, there's a number of reasons for this, but I actually think it actually hurts the game somewhat when the game's pushed back somewhat. Obviously, we want a game that's going to be very well polished. It's going to be finalized. It's not going to be released too early. You obviously want that, but at the same time, when a developer and a publisher come to an agreement on when they're going to release a game. So, for example, this for Cyberpunk 2077 was originally April 16th. And then it's pushed back to September. When you make that initial date of April 16th, you're pretty sure it's going to be ready to rock. The problem is, though, is when you're delaying it to September 17th, not that people are going to forget about it, because a lot of people obviously have this as a game that's, very much so on the top of everyone's most anticipated list. But the problem with it is that, for some of these smaller games, because this is becoming the new normal almost, that games are delayed quite significantly, a lot of these games are going to be forgotten about somewhat, and I think that's actually a significant problem for just the gaming industry, and I hope they get a handle on it. We see this in other, forms of entertainment, that being like the music industry, the movie industry. You see like movies and sometimes music albums are delayed as well. But generally speaking, it's not, a lot of times they really are very cautious about, sticking to the dates that they're given, like when, something's going to be released or whatnot. So I'm hoping that the gaming industry gets to that point as well, because a lot of hype was building, obviously, for Cyberpunk, and then everyone's thinking, oh, it's coming out in April, pretty early in, 2020, and then all of a sudden, boom, it gets, delayed to September. Same thing with The Last of Us 2, same thing with, Rainbow Six Quarantine, same thing with Watch Dogs Legion, same thing with Assassin's Creed, and all these other games that are going to be coming out. So that's the only thing. Part of me wonders, it kind of raises a red flag because of the possibility that there's been, some development hell involved in making the game, that they're just running into some problems. That's another thing that you have to wonder about. It's hard to say, guys. I'd love to hear what you guys think about that in the comment section below. So, what's the latest news on Cyberpunk 2077? Players who buy Cyberpunk 2077 on the Xbox One X will receive a free upgrade to the Series X version when it comes out. Musician Grimes recently revealed new spoiler-filled details on the character she's playing in Cyberpunk 2077, Lizzie Wizzy. You'll be able to play Cyberpunk 2077 on GeForce Now the day it releases. Cyberpunk 2077 obviously was delayed. CD Projekt Red hasn't ruled out monetization for Cyberpunk 2077's multiplayer. Cyberpunk 2077's hardcore mode will turn off the UI. Cyberpunk will be available on Google Stadia, and the creator of the Cyberpunk tabletop game will cameo in Cyberpunk 2020. So, that's kind of interesting. All of these different things, obviously, some pretty nice news. I mean, I think that the thing that kind of, is the bummer is Cyberpunk being delayed. And then the other thing is they haven't ruled out monetization. So that's kind of a big question mark as far as the monetization is concerned as well. Even though I'm not so much, really going to be focusing so much on monetization because I don't usually buy a lot of those, the different items that you can buy like in a store system that would be in a video game. I like to earn stuff myself in games, so I might not be the best person to talk to about it, but I do know that's a big deal for a lot of other people. So Cyberpunk 2077 will have around 75 handcrafted street stories. So CD Projekt Red has previously explained that each of Cyberpunk's quests is handcrafted, including the street stories, side quests similar to Geralt's monster hunting contracts in The Witcher 3. In an interview with On MSFT, CD Projekt's Krakow studio head John Mamis said there will be about 75 such street stories and explained a bit more about how they'll work. I think there's around 75 street stories. Then there's minor activities as well. The street stories are like little quests. There's story, but there's not like advanced cinematic storytelling sequences so much. They're a way to explore the world and level up your character. They're all custom done. There's nothing like that that's automatically generated. There are set templates that the guys can use, but each one is customized to make them feel unique. The world's going to be filled with that stuff. It should feel really good. So this is exciting that you've got a lot. We've got, obviously the full story is probably, who knows how long that's going to be. But when you have side stories and side quests that you can do similar to like The Witcher, that's amazing. It's going to keep you engaged in the game. And obviously them adding a multiplayer later on is going to keep you even engaged even longer in the game as well. So all really exciting stuff. Is Cyberpunk 2077 a first-person shooter? So dare we say that Cyberpunk 2077 is a first-person shooter RPG? We dare. Though cutscenes and driving sometimes switch to third-person, Cyberpunk 2077 involves a lot of first-person shooting. With guns, lots of guns, it's chaotic and fast-paced, but was less aggressive than, say, Doom. During a firefight in the opening moments of the demo, V, the main character, ducked and peeked around cover to spray a gang of organ scavengers with bullets from her automatic pistol. Like Destiny 2, numbers indicating damage dealt exploded with each landed spot, but enemies didn't feel like bullet sponges. We also love how agile V can be. So that's really cool. I think with this, guys, obviously it feels like a first-person shooter. It really does. However, it's obviously an RPG as well. So it's going to be like that first-person shooter that has those RPG elements. I think that's pretty cool. And then Cyberpunk 2077 character creation. During the 2018 demo, we got a quick peek of the character creation screen. You can customize hair, tattoos, and clothing. It doesn't look like you can change your character's bone structure, though. No deep menu of facial feature sliders here. At E3 2019, Quest director Tomas Giewicz explained to Gamma Sutra that Cyberpunk's character creation won't be limited by gender. We've put a lot of thought into this. One of the things we want to do in the final game, which we couldn't show in the demo yet, because as you mentioned, it's a work in progress, is to give the players as many options of customization in the beginning of the game as we can. CD Projekt Red is also working on customizable voices for V. Tomas Giewicz did specify at the time that these are all things the team wants to do, not already has done. So there's no surefire promises that this will carry into the final game. So I think it's pretty awesome that you can customize your character. That's going to be really something that's going to be interesting. I think a lot of people are going to be taking full advantage of that as well. And I'm definitely going to be taking advantage of that as well. I think that's going to be really cool, especially for like the multiplayer elements of the game. You can finish Cyberpunk 2077 without killing anyone. This is really interesting. So Cyberpunk 2077 will let you play the game without ever killing anyone. A great feature for folk who want to roleplay a less bloodthirsty V. but the game wasn't always planned this way. After feedback from E3 2018, CD Projekt Red took time to add non-lethal options to almost all of its weapons and cyberware upgrades. We say almost because there are some reasonable expectations. There's no non-lethal setting for the bazooka, for example. Pretty much every gun, pretty much every cyberware, you're able to use in a non-lethal way. You're able to knock them down, choke them, make them sleep, and so on. There are ways not to kill them and spare them like the way you could do with Sasquatch the boss. So this is really interesting, guys, for those of you, who kind of, like want to have a less bloodthirsty V or, main character that you're playing as. That is, that's kind of cool. I think that this is actually going to be, for a lot of people who are do speed runs in video games and such, they're going to probably do speed runs where they do, of course, not killing anybody. And that's going to be something that's going to be very interesting to see, as far as from a content creation standpoint. That'll be really cool to see as well. So we've already made a video, guys, about who Johnny Silverhand is. That is Keanu Reeves' character. You guys can check that out here on the YouTube channel. Will there be a romance? As much romance as you can find in a Cyberpunk future, yes. Like in The Witcher 3, you'll be able to pursue romance as V. Because Cyberpunk includes character creation, these romance options will be more diverse than they were in the Witcher series. There are a lot more options. You're defining your own character here, which means defining your sexuality any way you want, Quest designer Patrick Mills said in an interview with Game Informer. In June, CD Projekt Red said that romantic plotlines will be similar in scope and detail to Geralt's relationships, despite there being more of them. CD Projekt Red clarified to us further, romancing is something heavily present in Cyberpunk, and players will be able to form meaningful connections with other characters as well as go for one-night stands. So for those of you who are into that kind of thing, that will be available, of course, in Cyberpunk 2077 as well. Now, this is something that a lot of people have been wondering about. Is Cyberpunk 2077 mature rated like The Witcher? Yes. Cyberpunk 2077 isn't for kids and definitely seems to be leaning into its inevitable mature rating. In the first few minutes of the demo, V rescued a woman kidnapped by organ scavengers. She was found naked in a bathtub, and the game didn't flinch away from full nudity. There was also a ton of swearing as expected, but also what sounded like jokes. Cyberpunk 2077 looks keen to capitalize on the style of many premium cable shows. Lots of swearing and nudity, that is. So how does dialogue work? This is I think that this is pretty obvious, but in a lot of RPGs, dialogue sections basically put the game on pause while two characters talk stiffly back and forth. It's not the best way to deliver the story, and thankfully Cyberpunk 2077 has massive improvements in this area. While we're not 100% certain, all dialogue appears to happen in real time. You can continue moving and looking around, but when you focus the camera back on the character you're speaking to, dialogue options appear on the screen. There were usually 3 or 4 options at any time, which does suggest this system won't be as robust as in some other RPGs. So one thing that I'm kind of wondering about is, are you going to be making decisions throughout the story? And I personally, guys, I have my own take on being able to make decisions throughout the course of a story when you have multiple endings and things of that nature. I don't really like that as much. It's kind of okay for certain games. I would say a game that is only a single player story, I'm okay with it because you can kind of go back, and that's the only way that you can really connect with that universe is by going back and playing it over and over again. Whereas games like what Cyberpunk 2077 seems to be, with having multiplayer modes and maybe some other co-op modes and things of that nature, I would rather just have it as a linear experience where you're playing it. Obviously, it's open world, but at the same time, which way it turns, it all ends one way, so that we can have some significant conversations about that. Cyberware refers to augments that have all sorts of uses. During the demo, we visited a Ripper doc who could upgrade and replace our cyberware. We opted for a Kiroshi optical implant that let us zoom in on objects and also analyze the environment, seeing enemy levels and getting detailed information about them. We also picked up a subdermal grip for our handgun, which increases the damage we do when firing guns. So this is what kind of abilities you can unlock in the game. The implants are wildly cool, but it's strange that they don't seem to have downsides in a game world, which, at least in its tabletop incarnation, stressed in the dangerous sides of cyberware with mental illnesses like cyberpsychosis. It's a facet of the universe that we know the developers are aware of. The 2013 reveal trailer featured a woman getting arrested by C-SWAT for going off the deep end. On the tabletop, a character's empathy and humanity stats dictated how much cyberware it was safe for them to use, but empathy seems absent from Cyberpunk 2077. So what does Night City look and feel like, and how do you get around? So Cyberpunk 2077 takes place in the year 2077, which you probably didn't need us to tell you, and as mentioned, it's set within Night City, a fictional city between San Francisco and LA. In Del Coronado Bay, it would be well south of LA. That already exists in the Cyberpunk pen and paper RPG created by Mike Pondsmith. Punks and corporate stooges of all varieties wander these foggy, once mob-ruled streets, and by 2023, corporations are openly warring for them. Cyberpunk 2077 will show us what happened to the city in the aftermath of that war. The city is, by all accounts, massive. It features 6 districts with no loading screens between them. To help you get around, there are vehicles you can drive in either first or third person. It was hard to get a sense of how realized this part of the game is. We're not sure if there will be all the depth of simulation you see in something like Grand Theft Auto 5's driving in traffic, but it did look impressive and smooth. So this is exciting, guys. Obviously, it looks like we're going to be really just driving around and, in different vehicles to kind of get around the city. I think that was probably somewhat obvious, but one thing that I think is really interesting is that Cyberpunk 2077 won't have a morality system. So speaking to Gaming Bolt, Quest director Tomas Kiewicz said that Cyberpunk 2077 does not have morality mechanics. V will be treated differently in the world depending on their reputation, but a hard morality system won't be part of that. To complete it non-lethally, you have to be very good at stealth, Tomas Kiewicz said. Invest in points that allow you to stealth better. Use weapons that will allow you to incapacitate the enemy instead of killing them, to make the moral choices that will allow you to avoid killing people throughout the game. This sounds similar to how The Witcher 3 left moral choices in the player's hands without making it a hard statistic. So this is going to be interesting as well, guys. I mean, there's a lot of really interesting, vibes around this game and different kind of, it seems like there's going to be multiple ways that you can kind of connect with the universe in multiple ways, whether you want to go stealth or you want to actually go guns blazing. That's something that looks really cool about Cyberpunk 2077. And then will there be multiplayer? Yes, CD Projekt Red officially confirmed that Cyberpunk 2077 will have multiplayer, but the mode won't be introduced until all the free DLC is out the door. So who knows how long that's going to be, guys, until we actually get a multiplayer. Probably it's going to be, I would actually say it's probably going to be 6 months to a year after, because if you think about it, they want all that free DLC to come out the door. It's like, okay, but they're still releasing some DLC, for The Witcher 3. So, I mean, it might be a very long time until we see a multiplayer. Hopefully, not so much, though. CD Projekt Red says that there won't be any microtransactions. The E3 2018 trailer contains a little Easter egg which confirms that there will be no microtransactions in Cyberpunk 2077. What about expansions? Story expansions are an expectation for large open world games now, especially for CD Projekt Red after the extremely well-received Hearts of Stone and Blood and Wine expansions released for The Witcher 3. UI coordinator Alvin Liu told Prima Games, I know when I was playing The Witcher 3 and I finished everything, I still wanted to know what everyone was up to. I think we're going to have opportunities like that as well for Cyberpunk 2077. That's going to be pretty sick, honestly. We'll see kind of like where that goes. And really quick, kind of getting back to the microtransaction note earlier on, and as we were talking about this, microtransactions haven't been confirmed or denied for multiplayer. It's really just the single player role-playing game portion of this that won't have microtransactions, according to CD Projekt Red. Can you mod the game? Not at launch anyway. We have no plans to share at the moment, CD Projekt Global Community Lead Marcin Mamet said in a Cyberpunk forum thread dedicated to the topic. Obviously, we love to support the modding community in the future, but for the time being, we want to focus on releasing the game first. Hopefully, this clears things up a bit. So, other than that, guys, I mean, there is a lot of information here. that you can find out about Cyberpunk 2077. But really, if you think about it, CD Projekt Red has done a really good job of kind of keeping things under wraps overall. Nothing really, not a lot of things at least getting leaked out. We at least know when the date is, which I'm very excited about. Even though I wish it was in April. Obviously, we're gonna, we're getting it later on in the year, which is fine. And then on top of that, we know things about the game, but there's a lot of mystery to it, which I think is awesome because, we're not going into it knowing everything that's going to happen or everything that the game is about. We kind of get to experience those things on our own, and that's what the beauty of video games is. So it's very exciting, guys. I would love to hear from all of you guys. What do you guys think about Cyberpunk 2077 and what this game is going to kind of look like, and what are you going to be, trying to do first? Are you going to be going stealth? Are you going to be going guns blazing your first time playing the single player story? Let me know in the comment section below. And for everything and more content and videos based around Cyberpunk 2077, stay here with Zero TV.